Hello. About a month ago I went to a one-man production called Labels. It's a fascinating production by a guy looking at how we put adjectives to people, how we like to put people into boxes, and how that can be so unhelpful and divisive in terms of communities and individuals and working with people. It reminded me of a model I use in diversity training, which is a cracking model called Allport scale. Now, Gordon Allport was an American and in 1954 he created an Allport scale, specifically looking at what had happened in the Second World War and how the Nazis tried to exterminate the Jews. So it's 5 levels. The first level is antilocution, which is American for bad mouthing, so calling people names, being nasty to them. Second level is about avoidance. That's walking on the other side of the road, and Jews used to have yellow badges on, yellow stars, so they could be identified, so that people could avoid them. Thirdly is discrimination, encouraging people not to use their shops and their services. Fourthly, it's physical attack, attacking those shops, attacking those services, attacking the individuals. Then finally, the 5th level is extermination. Extermination is, as Hitler had it, the final solution, which was about exterminating all Jews. And so you had the 5 levels there, which a culture will go through in terms of achieving extermination of a group or minority group that it doesn't appreciate being there. Now, I'm in America at the moment. I'm on the battlefield of the first Manassas battle, just outside Washington DC, which was the first battle of the American Civil War in 1861. Now, when I was coming across her on the plane, I was sitting next to an American businessman, and one thing he said to me, he said we were talking about President Trump. He says, "I don't like to compare him to Adolf Hitler, but there are comparisons." And that again took me back to Allport's scale, and I started thinking about it in terms of what's happening in America at the moment. And if you think about the speech that he made around about the same time I was out here, which related to black NFL players, what's called taking the kneel. Now, what they were doing at the start of an NFL match, black players were kneeling rather than standing during the national anthem, and this was widely reported to be in relation to a peaceful protest about brutality against black Americans, particularly police brutality against black Americans. And Trump made a speech about, and this has been quite divisive at the matches, because some people are very supportive of the people's opportunity and right to have a peaceful protest, yet others and supporters of the team's players have been booing those players during the national anthem. So Trump then went on to make a speech where he talked about the people who, the black American footballers, he talked about them as those people. He called them sons of bitches. He also then went on to say how NFL had become a softer game and it should go back to being a hardier game. And perhaps coincidentally, or perhaps not, that the vast majority of those injuries happen to black players in a disproportionate ratio. So I then again started thinking about Allport's scale. You know, look at that scale again. Antilocution, bad mouthing. Sons of bitches, bad mouthing. Then looking at avoidance. Now, Mike Pence, the vice president, walked out of a match right at the start when he saw some of the players taking the kneel. He wanted to avoid that. Discrimination. Is that what's happening now? Are people being discriminated? When the president says NFL managers and owners should sack those players who are having that peaceful protest, is that discrimination? And then there's another level which has been put in since Gordon Allport created the model in 1954, and that's between 3 and 4, which is all about subtle aggression. Now, subtle aggression is having the power to do something without actually needing to resort to physical attack. And you could suggest that the president has that power. He has that authority as president, which means that he can motivate people in a particular way because of the office that he holds. So I was also out on a walk on the Appalachian Trail, and I was chatting to this black American who as with a lot of Americans, and don't ask me why because it's another discussion altogether, in his backpack he had a pistol with 7 bullets in it. And he was saying he's had discussions with his white colleagues, and they accept that white people, when they get their gun out, are more likely to be seen as attempting to help somebody. If a black person gets their gun out, then it's likely to mean trouble, and there is more chance of that black person having got their gun out of being subjected to force rather than the white person, because there is a different label put on those people. So I'm not suggesting that this in America is going to get to extermination of a particular group, but it is fascinating to look at, because I think America is currently in the most problematic racial situation it's been for probably 2 or 3 decades. But this isn't just about countries, it's about organisations as well. If you look at the employment tribunals that go through on a daily basis, weekly basis, you'll see that this is taking place in organisations, because this model, Allport's model, it doesn't necessarily mean to say extermination in terms of killing people. It can be ridding people of a particular group or a particular belief or of a particular type from the workplace. If you look at those employment tribunals, you'll see that that happens, and that continues to happen. What happens is, people aren't necessarily subjected to physical force, but they start at the bad mouthing, get to avoidance, it becomes uncomfortable for the individual, and they leave the organisation. So the majority has won. And the aim of any country and organisation should be to nip it in the bud when there is any idea of anti-locution or bad mouthing, because if that gets nipped in the bud, then the others cannot manifest themselves. And the aim of any organisation and culture should be to make sure that none of these 5 levels take place, but certainly nipping it in the bud in the first one means that you won't get to those other levels, because it is like a taxonomy, it's an ordered list, you go through that order. So, what is it like in your organisation? Are minority groups accepted? Is there bad mouthing? It might just be in fun. Is there discrimination? Do those people end up from a group of people from a minority group sit on their own at lunchtime? Are they invited to social events? It's very, very interesting to look at this model in terms of not just the wider world, but what happens in your own organisation. So that's Gordon Allport's model of prejudice and discrimination, 1954. Fascinating to look at it across organisations. Thank you.